Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, Brilliant Blue Reviews. If you're new here, my name is Heather, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about the movie Here, starring Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Robert Zemeckis also directed some other really popular movies, including Back to the Future and Forrest Gump, which also starred Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. Okay, before I tell you about the movie, first I have to tell you about my very odd movie-going experience. I just got home from seeing this film. I actually went by myself, and not only did I go by myself, but it's a Sunday night. It's Sunday, November 3rd when I'm filming this. It's been pouring down rain all day. You would think that a rainy weekend would be a popular day for people to go to the movies, but apparently not, because I was in a huge theater and I was the only person there. I was literally all alone in this huge theater, and so that was very weird. And afterwards, my daughter texted me and said, "What did you think? Did you like it?" And I was like, did I like it? So let's examine that. There's two main reasons why I'm having trouble determining if I liked it or not. I guess my general answer is yes, I did like it. But the two reasons I'm having trouble is, one, because I was all alone in an empty theater. I didn't have anybody with me to whisper something to or ask a question or comment to. I didn't have anybody to talk to about the movie right afterwards who had seen it with me. And I didn't even have anybody in the theater with me, around me, to feed off of, you know what I mean? I mean, you don't realize how strange it is to be the only person watching a movie in the theater until you do it. This hasn't happened to me very much. I mean, I've often gone to the movies by myself, but I can't think of very many times that I've gone to the movies by myself and been the only one in the theater. So it was very weird because there was nobody else in there to laugh or gasp or sigh or anything, to get any kind of other emotional feedback from around you. So that was very strange. And the reason that was especially strange for this movie is because this is a very unusual movie. This is very different than anything you've ever seen before. It's not like any movie I've ever seen before or even heard of. Robert Zemeckis obviously had a vision in his mind, and I think he did a good job of creating it. But it's just really different than anything else that you'll see. It's all shot from one spot. So it's a single point in space. It's like as if somebody set up a camera and then showed you, not even hundreds, thousands of years of stuff happening right in front of that camera, if that was possible. Now, granted, the really long time ago stuff is very quick at the very beginning. So they show a little bit of prehistoric stuff and then a little bit of Ice Age. And then it's into Aboriginal Native peoples in North America and then forward from there. But it's all in one spot. There's only 2 times that you see anything other than that point of view. About 3/4 of the way through the movie, I would say, one person drags a piece of furniture across the view that has a mirror on it. And so in the mirror, you can see what's behind the camera. So you haven't been able to see anything behind the camera before. And just as he's dragging that piece of furniture across, you can see what's back there, what's in that part of the house. And then at the very, very end, they finally take the frame back and all the way outside, looking at where you have been from the viewpoint of the camera the whole time. And then you finally get to see looking that way. And then they take it out and you finally at the very end get to see the outside of the house. But other than that, it's all from this single stationary point. The other thing that's really interesting is it covers a long period of time. It basically covers about the main part of it. Basically covers about, and when I say the main part of it, I mean in the lifespan of the house. So they say that the house was built in 1900. And I would say that the last scenes in time are in 2020, during the beginning of the pandemic. They make that very clear. So this is over a 120-year span of this house's life. The house does continue to live on beyond that, but it shows 120 years of the people living in this house. And then very briefly, it also shows some stuff before the house was built in that spot. What else is really interesting about it, and strange, is that there's many scenes. Now, go back to my review of We Live in Time, which is the last movie I saw before this, and they did a very similar thing in that movie that they did in this movie, which is that they kept jumping back and forth between multiple time periods very rapidly. Now, in We Live in Time, I didn't see the point of it. I didn't think it really made any sense. I didn't see why that was necessary. I didn't feel like it added anything to the film. But in this movie, I definitely did think it made it more interesting. I should add that within each individual time shown, it did move linearly. It did move, time moved forward. It's showing you I think, different families that lived in 4 or 5 different families that lived in the house. And it flips back and forth between the families that live there at the different time periods that they live there. But within those time periods, it's in order. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. So for example, it shows you what happened in their family from the time they moved into the house until the time they moved out of the house in order that way. But they went back and forth between the families. So you have to see it to understand it fully. But you didn't see each individual family's life out of order. He also arranged the scenes in such a way that they were kind of thematic. So, for example, there was the whole falling in love and beginning of a relationship stage. And there was we're setting up our new home here stage. And we have this young family stage. And then there was birth, there was death, there was leaving the house stage. So, and he put those scenes from each family together. So like he showed you the births that happened in each of these 6 families. And he showed you the deaths that happened in each of these 6 families. Like together in kind of bigger scenes, if you will. But each individual scene was so short. I don't think there were any scenes that were longer than a minute. 1 minute, 60 to 90 seconds maybe. I mean, maybe there were a couple that were longer than that, but they were very, very quick. And it was actually very interesting and cool how much he could cram into each of these little short scenes. He covered a lot of very significant events, issues in American history in this movie. Colonialism, the Revolutionary War, World War II, the beginning of air travel, the Vietnam War, 1918 flu pandemic, the COVID pandemic. There's more than that I'm not remembering, but he packed a lot of things into this movie historically that, it was a lot, but it was done in a really natural way, I guess. There's 6 families that you see. The main family that's most of the focus is on, it's actually a multi-generational family. They're in the house the longest. And that is Tom Hanks and Robin Wright's family. But it actually starts earlier than that with Paul Bettany, the actor, in a very different role. If you're used to seeing him like as Vision in the Marvel movies, he's very different here. And also very different than he was in like A Beautiful Mind and things like that. He, first of all, is doing an American accent because he's supposed to be American. He's a World War II veteran and his young wife, and they're looking for a home, and they move in right after World War II. So, I mean, it's probably like 1946, maybe, when they move into the house, and she tells him when they're buying the house that she's pregnant. And the child that she's pregnant with is Tom Hanks' character. And then they all live there. He marries Robin Wright. They have a daughter. So the 3 generations, and then Tom Hanks has a brother and a sister too. They all live in this house together over a span from 1946-ish to 2000 teens. I would say. It doesn't really specify, but so all that time, their family is living in the house. But there's 6 families total, 2 families that are shown before the house is even built. And then 2 families that live in the house before their family, and 1 family that lives in the house after their family. The 2 families that are before the house is built are really interesting. One is a Native American family who live there in nature, and something actually significant connects them to the core family of the movie much later. The other family is the family that lives in the house that you see out the window across the street. We used to talk about that a lot when we lived in our old house. We lived in an 1880 house, so even older than the house that's shown in this movie, because they said it was built in 1900. We lived in a house that was built in 1880, and one of the things that we always talked about was you don't necessarily need to care so much about what your house looks like. I mean, obviously you care, but what really matters is what is your view? What houses do you see when you look out your front window and you look across the street? And that was definitely something very key for us when we looked out our window across the street and what we were looking at. We definitely miss our view at our old house since we've moved here, because out here we're kind of out in a field and we're not really looking at anything very interesting. And at our old house, we had lots of trees and some really neat other historic houses across from us to look at. And the big, huge house that is across the street from this house, that's there before the house in the movie is built, is the son of Benjamin Franklin's house. I think they said his name is William Franklin. So that's whose house that is. So that's very significant that that is the house that's across the street that you see out the front window. So the second family that you see before the house is built is his family. And they even show Benjamin Franklin coming to see his son and all of that. And there's a whole Revolutionary War thing going on. So that's kind of funny. There's a family, husband, wife, and their daughter. Then there's a young couple that don't have any kids, but they were my favorite. They were actually really enjoyable to watch. They were a lot of fun. They were there through like 20s, 30s into the beginning of the 40s. So they were the family that owned the house before the main family, the husband and wife, but they were just absolutely adorable and they were really cute together. And the husband invents something very significant, which is really kind of fun. And then it's the main family. And then after they sell the house, there's a black family that lives there, and it's obviously modern day. And that's the family that it goes right up to the pandemic with, and the pandemic actually deeply affects them. What did I think of it? When I was sitting there watching it, because it just goes by so fast with all these little quick scenes. It's all so fast and quick the way they jump back and forth in time constantly. And like I said, the scenes are literally like a minute or less. They're so fast. But it doesn't feel fast or rushed or anything. I don't know. It was so different. And so while I was sitting there watching it, I did take note that a couple times I said to myself, I thought in my mind, this is so weird. Because it was just so strange. It was so bizarre. It was so different than any other kind of movie I've ever seen. In a way, it was actually really, really simple. But I'm sure it wasn't simple or easy to film, obviously. The other thought I had in my mind a couple times was, this is really lovely. And it really was. It was actually really lovely. He had some really neat details in there. He pulled a little Forrest Gump type thing. You know Forrest Gump, how there's the feather at the very beginning of the movie and then the feather lands on him at the very end of the movie when he puts his son on the bus to go to school? There was a similar thing in here with a hummingbird. So kind of watch for that. There was a hummingbird at the very beginning and a hummingbird at the end. That was kind of neat. That kind of connects everything together. And just the moments that he chose to include were lovely. I mean, it was fun. Some of them were really funny. Some of them were really sad. I guess one overall feeling I take away from it, though, is that it really was kind of sad. A lot of feeling that you're left with the different families was sadness, because people age and people get sick and people get hurt and people die. And also on an emotional level, sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes you have to put things off. Sometimes you have to completely forget about your dreams, or maybe people didn't pursue them. There's all of that in there, and it's really kind of tragic, like when you think about it and see it like that. I got very teary at the very end. The last scene with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright in the house, and what she says in that last little scene really got me. It's very poignant. It has every kind of emotion, just like real life would in between. I guess the more I think about it, I did like it, but it's just very strange. It's a very strange, unusual movie. I would happily go to it again. My son wants to see it. I think my daughter wants to see it too. I would go to it again. And one of the reasons I definitely would like to go to it again is because this is definitely a movie that you'd want to go back and look at again to see what you missed or what weren't you paying attention to the first time. Because those scenes are so quick and so short, you definitely might have missed stuff the first time around. So I would happily go back to it for that. There has been some controversy. They do de-age. I don't think they de-age Paul Bettany and the woman who plays his wife. They look about right. I'm not sure about that. But they very obviously, with AI, de-aged Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. And it's pretty, it looks like, I mean, it's one of the, my son and I joke all the time. We can't believe that people don't recognize artificial intelligence created images. We both, we have YouTube channels and we're working with video and photos and imagery and editing all the time. So to us, that stuff is so obvious. And we're just like, how do people not realize this is faked? This is not what this actually looks like or whatever. How can they not tell that? It's really obvious to us. But in this movie, I think even people with an untrained eye would be able to tell the scenes, especially when they get their faces really close to the camera. When they're really close to the point of view, it's so obvious that the de-aging and stuff is, something they did with AI. But the parts forward, in the future, from the ages that the actors actually are, with most of the actors actually, with Tom Hanks' character, Robin Wright's character, and his parents. Gosh, it's hard for me to say if they actually ever get to appear as the age they actually are right now. I don't even know. But it's very apparent that for the forward time frame, like in the future when they're older than what the actors are now, that's makeup. So the makeup artists did a good job on that. I went into it knowing that a lot of people were very critical of the de-aging thing that they used on it. But knowing that going in, it didn't bother me. I mean, I can see it, but suspend your disbelief for a second and just put yourself in the scene and the emotions of the scene and what's happening. And just don't pay attention to that stuff and it's fine. So I wouldn't let that bother you. I think the people who are going on about that are being overly critical. Overall, I would give this movie 4 out of 5 stars. Now that I think about it, I'm going to give it a 4. I was going to say 3 when I first started talking about it, but the more I talk about it, the more I have come to appreciate it a little bit, and I'm going to give it a 4. So, and I know that there has been some talk about whether or not it might be nominated for some Oscars. This is Oscar season. After all, when we see the things that are going to be nominated for Oscars later, or Academy Awards, I think it's definitely worth seeing. I was actually surprised that I was the only one in the theater, that nobody else was there to see it on a rainy Sunday. So I would definitely recommend that you go see it and see what you think for yourself and see how you feel about it after you go to it. If you do see it, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would really appreciate. I want to make this channel a dialogue. I'd really like to get some feedback from other people who see these movies. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you don't want to miss any of my upcoming reviews, I would really encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.